Welcome to the LeaderImpact podcast. We are a community of leaders with a network in over 350 cities around the world, dedicated to optimizing our personal, professional, and spiritual lives to have impact. This show is where we have a chance to listen and engage with leaders who are living this out. We love talking with leaders, so if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions to make this show even better, please let us know. Best way to stay connected in Canada is through our newsletter at leaderimpact.ca or on social media at LeaderImpact. If you're listening from outside of Canada, check out our website at leaderimpact.com. I'm your host, Lisa Peters, and our guest today is Stephen Clements, a seasoned entrepreneur and executive with over 40 years of invaluable experience. As the founding partner of Next Chapter Ventures, Stephen wears many hats: advisor, mentor, and coach, dedicated to guiding leaders through the next chapters in both business and life. His mission is to empower these leaders to serve with purpose and leave a lasting generational impact. Hailing from Newmarket, Ontario, Stephen shares his life journey with his wife of 32 years, Tanya. Together, they have raised 2 adult children and are proud grandparents to 2 grandchildren. Beyond his professional endeavors, Stephen actively contributes to the community as a board member of the Jennifer Ashley's Children's Charity, focusing on improving the quality of life for seriously and chronically ill children and their families. Since 2014, Stephen has been an integral part of LeaderImpact, actively co-leading a group in York Region. Additionally, he serves as the event coordinator for the LeaderImpact York Region team. Join us as we explore the insights, wisdom, and impactful experiences that have shaped Stephen Clements' remarkable journey. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It is great to have you. Now, I'm just going to admit, I did stalk you on LinkedIn when I had the intro, and I didn't put there's nothing here about Canadian Tire. So I'm going to tell you, it is one of my favorite stores. And I think it's my husband's too. But for anyone who doesn't know, not in Canada, Canadian Tire, what is it?
If you try to explain Canadian Tire, the retail store to Americans, it's like, you can say, well, it's kind of Walmart, but not Walmart. It's kind of Home Depot, but not Home Depot. It's kind of Dick's Sporting Goods. And it's kind of everything that Canada needs under one roof, basically, is what they try to be. But what a lot of people don't know is that Canadian Tire also owns a lot of other businesses, including a chain of sports store, multiple banners of sporting goods stores, Mark's, which was formerly Marksburg Warehouse, the brand Helly Hansen, as well as many, many other brands. So Canadian Tire is actually, they have their own bank. There's a lot to Canadian Tire, more than just the Canadian Tire stores, but there is over 500 Canadian Tire retail stores across Canada where you can pretty much get anything. I think one of the slogans is for anything for life in Canada. It's Canadian Tire. Other than maybe food, but there's chips and snacks. You could even survive off that for a few days. So
yeah, I used to go to events and I would joke and say, "Well, do you take Canadian Tire money?" Yeah, because I had so much of it.
Well, now that's all electronic, so it's all on the card, digital now. So like everything else.
That's how long I have been loving Canadian Tire.
There you go.
Yes. Well, I want to again welcome you to the show, and we've got some questions for you, and I'm excited to start with you. So are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
So LeaderImpact, we're always looking for a little bit of your professional story and how you got to where you are today. And I liked reading yours. Canadian Tire, you had some big jobs: senior VP, GM, National Sports, and then you went on, or actually pro hockey first and then sports. So again, my favorite area. But I want to hear a little bit more about your journey, how you got to where you are today. And if you have a couple of snapshots of where pivotal or turning moments that you had along the journey.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up the son of a serial entrepreneur. My dad was forced into business as a 16-year-old when his dad suddenly passed away at 42 without a succession plan in place. So later on in the mid-60s, my dad started selling sporting gear to schools across Ontario from the trunk of his car, which led to, in 1971, him opening National Sports, which was one of the first big box sports stores in the GTA. I worked there growing up as a kid, and had thoughts about staying in the family business, but ended up going a different direction. I went off to attend a Bible college in your home province of Saskatchewan, and I had thoughts of going into vocational ministry. But after graduating, returned to Ontario and ended up getting back into the family business. And over the next 24 years, I went back and forth between the family business and my own entrepreneurial ventures. And the first pivotal moment, other than some of those, was in 2005. We sold the family business to Forzani Group, which most people would know as Sport Check. And I agreed to stay on for 2 years to lead the transition. Part of the deal at the time was my dad retire, and I was the president at the time, so I took over and I was going to run it for 2 years and then probably move on. I was 43 years old, and it was my first non-family job. So I'd always either worked for my dad or for myself. The first paycheck that didn't have my Clements last name on it was when I was 43 years old. So um, it was quite a change. And 6 years later, in 2011, Canadian Tire then bought the Forzani Group. So we went from being a small public company to part of an iconic, very large, for you Canadian listeners, but other outside Canada, it's a very well-known 100-year-old Canadian retailer that owns lots of other businesses. So we were part of that corporation. And shortly after that, Canadian Tire purchased a banner called Pro Hockey Life, which had some retail stores across Canada as well. So our team also ran that. So we were running national sports. We had 18 stores at the time. There was about the same number of Pro Hockey Life stores across Canada. And my initial 2-year commitment turned into a 16-year-old career. And when I signed that contract, I had a friend of mine who said he gave me 6 months, and he thought I wouldn't last that 6 months, and he took the under. But in 2021, Canadian Tire made the corporate decision to shut down the national sports business, and which meant my time as a corporate executive was done. So that's when I switched over and started doing coaching and consulting, and started Next Chapter Ventures with the hope of leveraging my life experience, both in business and personally, to help younger leaders and help leaders that are looking what to do next in their lives. So that's where I'm at today.
Yeah. So I want to go back to, because I have experienced this, the company. You talked about at 43, it was national sports, sold to Forzani's. You got a check from someone else. It didn't have your name on it or the company name.
Yeah.
What was the emotions of feeling you had to let go? I mean, this was your dad's company going to be yours. What was that like for you?
I think when I think back about it, I remember the first weekend I came home, and my wife Tanya said to me, "You seem different." And I said, "Yeah, I don't have to worry about making payroll this week." It was like there was this huge relief off my shoulders that, because I'd had my own business for about 13 years, we had our own businesses, and the rest of the time working for my father, there was always financial stress and pressure. So it was always you really were fighting for survival as an entrepreneur. Whether you were growing, there was good times, bad times, but there was always that pressure of having to, we had at the peak 800 employees. So there was always that pressure of performance, and if sales were bad, if you owed the bank money, and if you couldn't pay a vendor. So there's all that personal pressure, where now all of a sudden I was just employee number 47 or whatever. And I was just, I was paid to do a job, whether I did it well or not. I got paid, and I tried to do it well, but it was just a totally different experience. And I didn't know if I would like it at first. Mm-hmm. But as I got into it, and as I got to meet people and got the different experience, I did quite enjoy it. So,
yeah. And do you think that, I mean, going from your own company, and then you just said, I enjoyed meeting the new people. That's part of your journey of then ultimately going into Next Chapter Ventures, right? Like, it's just,
yeah, it all ties together. It all ties together when you look back. It's easy to see it. At the time, you don't see it, but I think it's easy in hindsight. We look back and we see what's happened for a reason, and I think it was. But there was some hard times too. When you're part of a big corporation, it's very difficult. I mean, the Forzani Group was, a small, medium-sized public company, but even there, we were still the small dog, because Sport Chek was the big dog. And then when we were part of Canadian Tire, even Sport Chek with 200 stores was still, compared to Canadian Tire, was really, very small. So you're always fighting for resources and trying to prove yourself and trying to show that you deserve to have investment in your business. So it was just a completely different life as an entrepreneur. I think you can bring some of that to the corporate world, but it is totally different when you're in a corporate, especially a public company, where there's all the pressure to hit quarters and those, one of my bosses used to say the tyranny of the immediacy, everything has to happen today because you've got a quarter to report on. So it's just a completely different environment than entrepreneurial where you're struggling a lot of times just to survive. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. So our next question is a little bit about your best principle of success. And if you can tell us one of yours and maybe a story that might illustrate that.
okay. I think for me, when I thought about this, it's the principle is it's not about me. And I guess some people call it servant leadership, but I think it's a lot more than that. I think whether I was a corporate executive or an entrepreneur, it was very easy and frankly normal to think how everything impacted me personally. What was my role, my compensation, my recognition, my P&L, my team, my family. It's only been over the last 10 years that I've started to look at things differently, put the needs of the business and the people in it ahead of my own. And I'm still not perfect at it, but it's something I strive for every day. And I can give you a couple examples that I think people can relate to. The first one happens all the time is, at least for me, is I'll be in a meeting or a situation where I know there's something I should say or speak up. And obviously I think it needs to be said because it's in my mind and I've got experience in that area. But my first thought is, what's going to be, how am I going to be perceived for asking this question in this situation? Am I going to be a troublemaker? Am I not going to be a team player? Am I going to be going against something the boss had in mind? So I often think about that. And it really comes down to, I think it's fear, because we're thinking more about what it's going to mean for us versus what it's going to mean for the company or the people. And the specific example that played out for me in the corporate environment was I regularly have senior leadership team meetings at fairly high level, and we would have up to 10 people in the meetings, and these would be pre-COVID, so they were always in person. And during a challenging business time, we had a regime change, so we had a new leader come in, very high level, very great leader, brilliant thinker, lots of big ideas, quite open-minded, and really a nice person. Everybody really liked this person. They often had ideas that were so big and so out there that we just, in the room, we kind of knew this is no way that we could actually execute on this. So initially, a lot of those ideas just went right through, and we ended up trying to do these things because everyone was, business wasn't great when they came in. So it wasn't like we could say, well, we've got it figured out. You know what you're talking about. So there was some of not wanting to stir the pot, not wanting to make a bad impression on the new leader, which is protection of your own job, protection of your own business unit. And I think that it wasn't until I really clicked into this idea that it's not about me that I was willing to stand up and just speak up and just ask the right questions, and not really thinking first and foremost about what it impacted me, but what could happen if I don't speak up, because the responsibility to speak up is there, because that's why I'm in the room. I was invited to that room for my experience, and if I don't speak up, then I'm not doing my job. So two interesting things happened. One is that some of the other senior leaders in the room, as we would take breaks or as the meeting would end, would come up to me confidentially and say, listen, I really thank you for asking that question, because it really needed to be asked, but I was too scared to ask it. And I hope you can keep doing that. And I was like, well, I will, but you need to speak up too. But they were fearful. And the other thing was that the leader in question loved it. Like, he wanted people to, they wanted people to challenge. Because they love that they love the debate. But they don't want a bunch of people nodding their heads. So for me, I was able to take that and translate it to my leadership team that worked with me. And, I was able to pass some of that on. I've heard a couple of things. This is kind of some of the leader impact stuff, but one of this, Nikki Gumbel from Alpha, he called it the obligation to dissent. Patrick Lencioni talks about mining for conflict, the idea that you need people to disagree in a meeting, you need people to speak up and have their voice heard. So even if you don't go with what they want or what they're hoping for, it doesn't just become a bunch of people advocating for their own ideas. It becomes everyone pulling the same direction. So I think unless you're going to have the put the company and the people first ahead of yourself, you're not going to be able to do that. So certainly not perfect at it, but I think that's something that I've really tried to apply over the last many years.
Yeah, I love that. I think people listening, you were invited to the table, whatever board, whatever council, you were invited to come and to let go of that fear and the need to speak up, because that's diversity. If I was invited to a table as a female and it's all male, whatever diversity is that, we are invited. And we have to speak up. So that's a great, it's not about you. It's about the best thing for the company, the best thing for the people.
And that goes in a lot of different
Yeah.
directions. If you think about guys who are making decisions, because it's very easy, as I said, especially in a corporate environment, to be so focused on your own business unit, even, or your own people, your own team, and not think about the rest of the company, or not think about other divisions, or not think about other people and the impact that your decisions are going to have on other people. So I think there's a lot of selfish leaders. Hopefully not as many as there used to be. I mean, there's one of the great books we studied at Leader Impact is Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek, and kind of talks about that. That's one of the places I kind of first started thinking about that, and I think there's others, but that's one that stands out to me. So
yeah. So I think what I've heard, and I just want to confirm, is that when you were an entrepreneur versus now on the team, would you say that you put your head down more as an entrepreneur because you're feared about paying the bills, but now you have an opportunity to sort of look up and go, this is what's best for the company? Or would you say there was a transition there?
for sure, yeah. I think it depends on how. As an entrepreneur, there's so many different. You could be riding really high, and you could be riding really low, and you could be in the middle. And where corporate, I think it's more every day. You just got to show up and keep doing your job and trying to get better. And I think where entrepreneurs have a lot more highs and lows. At least I did as an entrepreneur, and I saw that with my family. My father's 84; he's still an entrepreneur, so I see that with him. So I think that there's more consistency and more opportunity to maybe think strategically in a corporate environment where oftentimes you don't have that luxury as an entrepreneur because you have to put food on the table for yourself or your employees, and you're not really able to step back and make a strategic decision that will be right in the longer term. But then you weigh that against the corporate environment where you got to hit your quarter. So there is some similarities, but there's some differences as well. So,
which is a great reason for a coach.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So, I mean, I think we all know we learn more from our failings and mistakes than our own successes. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to share one of your greatest failings or mistakes and what you have learned from it.
Sure. This is hard because I've made so many, but I will share one of the biggest and most recent. I did mention about national sports was started by my father, trunk of his car in 1960s. As our peak, 21 stores, 800 employees, and $100 million in sales. There was many ups and downs over the years, but the brand in Ontario was always strong, and we had a lot of loyal employees with many with 20 plus years experience. When the business was sold in 2005, since that time, we had many different structures, and I had many different bosses and we were different owners, but ultimately I was always in charge. So, as we went into COVID, as we went into 2020, 2021, Canadian Tire made the difficult strategic decision to close down our business. So at that time, immediately, obviously, I understood completely from a strategic point of view, from Canadian Tire's point of view, why they were doing it. It made sense for them. But I had so many thoughts about what I could have done differently and how I could have saved that business, and the responsibility I had to the 800 employees and the responsibility to our vendors, the responsibility to our customers. And it was a very emotional time. And it was very, very difficult and heart-wrenching. And I just, it was a very difficult time. But what I guess happened through that is, first of all, respectfully, I was given the opportunity by Canadian Tire to allow to stay on with my team and lead this closing. So, we set a goal to make sure we operated during the close down the same way we did for the 50 years before that as a company, provide the best possible return for the corporation while treating our employees and our customers and our suppliers with respect, and finding jobs for the employees within the organization who wanted them, which we were able to do. And just providing a first-class experience, even though we were closing the business down. And as the closing got underway, it's hard to remember, but it was only 2.5 years ago, we were still in COVID. So in spring of 2021, we were in kind of that second wave phase. And that's when we were closing these stores. So my wife, Tanya, and I, we did a across Ontario road trip to every store to say thank you and goodbye to our store teams. And what amazed me then, and still amazes me as I think back now, is every single store, the store general managers and the teams, they were more concerned about me. I'm going to get teary now. More concerned about me than we were about them. And they were losing their jobs. They'd worked the front lines during COVID with masks all day long. And now here they were, so as we hugged and we cried and we laughed and we giggled and we grieved together, it was just amazing to see that the culture that we had built in the company, they were showing me what it meant to not be about me, because they were making it up. I was trying to make it about them, and they were trying to make it about me. So it was very, very emotional time. And, but we learned a lot. And I was just so proud of all the people that we worked with. So,
Yeah. That's a pretty big deal to travel across to all your stores and personally greet them, to shut them down, or to, that's a big deal. Most people would, send out the letter, the email. I don't know. That was a
yeah, it was normal. It was something that it wasn't even in question that we were going to
yeah.
do that. And, it was just, we made sure that as many of the team members as possible could be there. They knew we were coming in advance. They knew when we were coming and when we'd be there, so they could try to make sure they were there if they wanted to see us and ask us questions. And we try to find out if they have jobs yet, or if they're looking for jobs, or anything we do to help them find jobs. And as I said, I think pretty much everybody who wanted to stay within the company, we were able to find a job somewhere else in the organization. And several decided to leave, and we were able to help them find jobs elsewhere as well. So that was kind of the driving force behind trying to, and also just, we had customers that were third generation customers that, had their grandparents had come to our stores, and they were, as kids now. So, the customers were really, really sad, but, at the end of the day, that business moves on, and, we all learn and grow.
Yeah. It's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. At Leader Impact, we want to grow personally, professionally, and spiritually for increasing impact. So I was wondering if you'd be willing to share an example of how the spiritual makes a practical difference in your life as a leader.
Sure. So I told you about, going to Bible college. What I didn't tell you was that after Bible college, when I returned to the family business, I drifted away from my faith. And, I would say for almost 30 years, from a faith perspective, I was wandering in the wilderness, really a true prodigal. And it wasn't until the fall of 2013 that my wife, Tanya, gave her life to the Lord. And together we embarked on a spiritual journey. Hers was new and mine was being renewed. Early on in that process, in April of 2014, before we'd even started really going to a regular church, we were introduced to Leader Impact by a gentleman named Denis Frappier, at a Saturday night dinner party. And, 3 days later, I was at his, in the spring of 2014, I was at his 7 a.m. Tuesday meeting, and I've been going to a meeting every Tuesday morning, except some summer breaks since then. And, the people I've met, the books we've studied, the outreach events we've planned, have literally changed my life. And as we say at Leader Impact, we're focused on all three: personal, professional, and spiritual. For me, it's been transformational. And, the only reason I can even think about trying to practice a principle was not about me. It's because my foundation of my relationship with God through my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and knowing it's all about Him. And I try and remember that every day, performing for an audience of one, and it's not really about me. So I think really for me, it's everything.
Yeah. So going back to Briarcrest, how did you get from Ontario to Saskatchewan that's not a large college. Briarcrest is not large. How did you
No.
get there? And then how did you get there and then leave there and step away from the faith for 30 years?
Probably another podcast, but I'll do it quickly as I can. The people who know me well have heard this story, but, my grandmother was the dean of students. I went to live with her in grade 12. I had, there was some struggles at our home. My parents had split up when I was younger, and so I lived with my grandma at Caronport in grade 12,
Okay.
and, then I stayed on and went to Bible college for 3 years. I returned back home, back to the old place I'd lived, and back to my old friend group, back to my old life. And it just kind of, they really didn't have the support in this place. They didn't really have a church, didn't really have, sound habits. And so it was just kind of literally a drift, that just happened, without having really support in place to something like Leader Impact, where I could have plugged into, that I would have had people, like-minded people that I could have shared my journey with. I didn't have that. So I think that was one of the reasons. So,
Yeah, I think that's common. I think of even myself, when I left here, grade 12, I didn't come back and I mean, I only went to church on Sunday because my mom took me, right? Like it wasn't a relationship. It was just church on Sunday. And it took me 12 years. Like I think I was past 30 when I decided it was time. And I don't think it's uncommon. But I wanted to hear your story. I'm like, I didn't go to Bible college, but yes. So at Leader Impact, we are about leaders having a lasting impact. And I know in your bio, you talked about generational impact. So I'm excited to hear this question, because as we continue to move through our own journeys, have you considered what you want your faith legacy to be when you leave this world?
Yeah. This question really made me think. And, start with a few things. One is John Maxwell says, and I've got it written up on my wall, says success means having those closest to you love and respect you the most. And that's always been something I've thought about. And we recently had a funeral for a close family member. And it reminded me of the other thought of living our lives for those who will be in the first two rows of our funeral. So it's really having those people closest to me that know me the best, really respect me, love me the most. And then this morning, actually, I was listening to one of my favorite songs called Christ Be Magnified by Cody Carnes. And it just made me think that really what I'd like my legacy to be is that Christ was magnified in my life. And that's why my current mission to leverage my life experience to evoke people, starting with my own family, live with purpose and make a generational impact. It's got to be more than just about making money. It's got to be more about just building businesses. It's got to be about people. And I think specifically all the people I've met at LeaderImpact and the groups, the changes I've seen in people and their families and their personal, professional, spiritual lives is a big part for me. And I think that'll live on long after I'm gone. And about 6 years ago, I started with a small group of people. I invited them to join me reading the Bible in a year. And we've had a group for the last 6 years. This year, we got about 40 people reading the Bible on a Plan on You version Bible app. And it's been amazing to see how some people's lives have been changed just by reading the Bible every day. I know at least 2 other groups have spun off from that doing the same thing. So we've got people reading God's word, and that's something I like to see grow and continue to.
Yeah. I have a LeaderImpact group. And so when you talk about reading the Bible for a year, some people have struggled, and I'm like, well, you could read it in chronological order. And because people just pick up the Bible and they read it from front to back. I never knew this till a few years ago. So, and I don't know if people know that. You can just Google read the Bible chronological order, and it's a year, and it's easy, and you read it how it happened. And you can do it on the YouVersion app. I've done that. It's so many options.
Yeah, we've done them different ways, and there's lots of different ways, and we try to change it up every year. This year, we're actually using the Nicky Gumbel from Alpha, using his plan. He's got lots of great commentary, and we've done different ones. We've done it chronologically. There's something called the Bible Project, which I'd highly recommend. They have videos, interactive videos, which are great, and they have plans for New Testament, the whole Bible in different orders, and that gives a lot of commentary along and instruction along the way as well. So
people can do this at home. I mean, you can share it with LeaderImpact, but I think it's a great start, and when you're not sure, so good way to open the door. All right. Well, our last question is we always want to know about our people we're interviewing is what brings you the greatest joy.
Well, in a few months, my wife Tanya and I will celebrate our 33rd anniversary, and as you mentioned earlier, we have two adult kids, 2 granddaughters. We actually were able to have lunch with our 2 granddaughters yesterday, and just spending time with our kids and grandkids and seeing them grow as people brings me joy. My wife Tanya has her own home staging and home styling business. She had it for the last 10 years, and seeing her grow in her faith and as an entrepreneur and a business leader brings me joy. The 2 of us are best friends. We love to travel together. We've been many amazing destinations all over the world, and seeing how much she loves to experience new places and cultures, that brings me joy. And most of all, I would say that knowing that after 30 years in the wilderness, Jesus welcomed me back as his prodigal son a little over 10 years ago brings me the ultimate joy.
Yeah. Oh. Stephen, I want to thank you for sharing all that. It takes time out of your day. And I think just sharing stories is what everybody needs to hear. And I think that's why I show up here on the podcast, is to hear stories, because it builds my own faith every time I show up. So thank you.
Well, thank you for doing this. I know it takes a lot of time for you, and I know you're busy, so I appreciate you taking the time to do this. So. No,
I love it. Well, so this ends our podcast version, but if anyone is listening and they want to engage with you, how can they find you?
I am on LinkedIn. I've only been on LinkedIn for about a month, but I am on there. So I'm new to LinkedIn. And I also have a business site, nextchapterventures.ca, and a personal site, stephenclements.com. So
excellent.
There's lots of places to find me. So LinkedIn's probably the easiest way to start and connect with me there.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, I want to thank you for joining us. It has been a pleasure to spend the last half hour with you. It's been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, if you're part of LeaderImpact, you can always discuss or share this podcast with your group. And if you are not yet part of a LeaderImpact and would like to find out more and grow your leadership, find our podcast page on our website, leaderimpact.ca, and check out our free leadership assessment. You will also find on our webpage Chapter 1 of Braden Douglas's book, Becoming a Leader of Impact. You can also check out groups available in Canada at leaderimpact.ca, or if you're listening from anywhere else in the world, check out leaderimpact.com or get in touch with us by email info@leaderimpact.ca, and we will connect you. And if you like this podcast, please leave us a comment, give us a rating or review. This will help other global leaders find our podcast. Thank you for engaging with us, and remember, impact starts with you.